Blog Talk Radio.
Fulfill Radio, a voice you can trust. Broadcasting live presents Two Guys and a Bible with Don Preston and William Bell. Join us each week at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central as we bring you exciting, sound, challenging, and comforting messages regarding the end times. Thank you for tuning in today. Don Preston is the founder of Preterist Research Institute, or PRI. Don is a prolific author, having written and published 19 books, a host of audio and DVD studies, and is a debater and defender of the full preterist view. His websites are BibleProphecy.com, Eschatology.org, and DonKPreston.com. William Bell is the founder of AllThingsFulfilled.com Ministries and has a website bearing the same name, and has authored 3 books, audios, and DVDs. He has published hundreds of articles and recordings. And now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Two Guys and a Bible broadcast with Don Preston and William Bell.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Two Guys and a Bible here on Fulfill Radio, a voice you can trust. My name is Don K. Preston, and for tonight and probably the next month, perhaps even slightly longer than that, instead of this being Two Guys and a Bible, this will be One Guy and a Bible, unless I'm able to have some other guests that will be with me, which is very distinctly possible. But I'm sure that you are aware by now of the fact that William Bell is in Ghana, in Africa. He is involved. He's already been over there 3 different times on missionary trips, preaching the gospel of Christ, teaching people about our Lord and about his sacrifice, about his death, his burial, his resurrection, and his plan for us today, and, of course, sharing with them the story of eschatology as the demonstration and the proof of the accomplished work of Christ. And he has done some absolutely fantastic work over there. We have discussed it on this program before as he shared with us some of the things that they're getting accomplished over there. And I got to tell you, it's just, it is so encouraging. It's so exciting to consider the life-changing work that William is involved in and encouraging over there and planning with the local citizens there. So I tell you, it's absolutely wonderful to be able to kind of carry on here on Two Guys and a Bible, here on Fulfilled Radio, while William is traveling abroad and doing such an absolutely incredible work. I can tell you I'm already excited about having a report from William when he comes back. I'm hoping that before he even gets back, he will send some emails on with progress reports on what is being accomplished. Now, I do know that their plans while he is here this time, that they have plans to start a building program over there, and that's very exciting all within itself. You know, it's not easy to purchase property, to purchase land over there, and it's not always the easiest thing in all the world to engage in a building project. But as I understand it, all of that has been arranged. Everything is sort of kind of in order. And as he shared with me, it looks like they're going to be able to begin a building program over there. It will be a multi-purpose, a multi-use building for the church that it has been established there. Brother Solomon Baidu is the minister there. He is a very, very sharp teacher of the Word of God. I've corresponded with him a good bit on private messenger, on Facebook. He asks excellent questions. He asks very thoughtful questions, and he has done a lot of really good study himself. So, pardon me. He's the minister leading the congregation over there that William will be working with. In addition to that, William will be working with a couple of other men that he has met, that he has taught and instructed, men who are on board with learning more about covenant eschatology. They have not, they haven't labeled him as a false teacher and a heretic. They just simply want to know more about what William is teaching. One of them especially, as if memory serves me correctly, has already become convinced, and so he wants to work with William very closely. So like I said, there's some wonderful, wonderful things going on with William over there. I know William is tremendously excited about being able to have a part to play in that missionary work over there. Ghana is the place of his heritage, and so for him to be able to travel there and to have an impact on the lives and on the hearts and on the future of those people there, I know has got to be tremendously, tremendously exciting to William. Leora, his lovely wife, did not get to go on this trip. They're already sort of kind of planning another trip even later in the year. So as you can tell, and as I mentioned a few moments ago, William's already been over there 3 times. And this will be his 4th trip. They're already planning another one. And so you can tell they've got some good things going there in Ghana that hold tremendous, tremendous promise for of the radio. What? It kicked my wife off of her computer. It doesn't say the episode has ended, but we had, folks, if you can, Rod Rupert, if you are listening, if you wouldn't mind sending me a text letting me know, can you hear me or not? I guess if you can't hear me, you can say what happened. But we had a major spike here, electrical spike here a moment ago. My computer blinked really badly. The TV went off, and it knocked my wife's computer off, and it turned all the lights of the house off. Now, again, it doesn't say that I'm off air. It says, I think I'm still on air. I'm going to hope that I'm on air. I'm going to hope that everything is still being recorded. If not, well, I'm just talking into a microphone. Thank you, Rod. I appreciate that very, very much. That's good to know. Rod Rupert, and had some folks letting me know that they can hear me. So that's great to know. I do really appreciate that. So with all of the report there as we know it of William's work there in Ghana, I know that you probably share with me in the enthusiasm and the excitement of what William is doing there. And I tell you, I just got to tell you, this has been an exciting week for me as well, insofar as the correspondence that I've been engaged in with different people from around the world. I've been corresponding with some people. Oh, you go ahead, pardon me. I have not been sleeping well. So anyway, but I've been corresponding with a good number of people who have told me that they were dispensational, but as a result of our ministry, they are now complete believers in covenant eschatology. That's always tremendously exciting. So we're thankful for that. And by the way, folks, let me make an announcement here. As most of you know, I have a regular Friday television program of 30 minutes long on the Now TV network. And as I have said here on our program, my viewership on my YouTube videos has continued to grow at a very, very exciting rate. I know one of my videos from last week, in less than a week, has received it's knocking the door on 1,000 views. Normally, we rock along at anywhere from 5 to 6 sometimes 700. But I know one of those videos, which was part of a summary of the All of It Discourse series that I've been doing in discussing the marriage in Matthew 25, 1 to 13, that one has reached, like I said, 2 days ago. I guess it was 2 days ago I looked at the count, and it was over 900 views. So that's very, very exciting to realize that. And, pardon me, William and I have discussed the fact that Now TV has just recently increased the potential audience of their outreach, of their viewing audience, like 2.5, 3 times greater than it was. They now have a potential audience over 300 million people. Now, for us to be a part of that expanded audience, it will cost an additional $250 to $300 a month. And I've made an appeal for that extra help. Now, when I say that $250 to $300 a month, that's a guesstimate. I do not have the final figure from them yet. I will be calling them probably next Monday and talking to them to see what the exact cost would be to be a part of their entire audience outreach. And again, folks, 300 million potential homes. Now, am I suggesting that all 300 million potential homes are going to tune in to morning musings every week? No, I'm not suggesting that. But the more homes that we have access to, the more likelihood that we have to be viewed. And I will tell you this, that we did receive one check in the mail from a friend of ours in Oregon to help with some of that cost to expand our viewing audience. I received a phone call today of a very generous offer to help us expand our viewership. So, if you would like to be a part of expanding Preterist Research Institute morning musing on Now TV to a potential audience of 300 million people, we would love to have your help. And obviously, I mean, more than obviously, we want to take advantage of this. But it will not happen without some financial support from our listeners and from our viewers. Those of you who continue to support our ministry on a regular basis, our regular ministry on a regular basis, I just simply cannot express enough our profound appreciation. And by the way, if you are a regular supporter of Preterist Research Ministry, Preterist Research Institute, on a regular basis of $50 or more, you will be, I've already mailed out a copy of my brand new book, Circumcision in the New Creation, ? I've already sent out a bunch of those to our supporters. And I said $50 a month, but actually we've sent them out to folks who support us with a whole lot less than that. But we are so thankful. We were so appreciative of the support that we do get for your faithfulness. And we know that things have been very, very tough because of COVID. But I can tell you this, due to the COVID, Preterist Research Institute has lost in excess of $500 a month in monthly support. And that is very, very, very painful. It's having an impact on our ministry, and we don't want that, but we understand. And so we're just simply sharing the news with those of you who have been our supporters, who are our supporters, and who do support the work that we are doing to spread the message of God's faithfulness of keeping His word, all of His word, when He said He was going to keep His word. So that's something to keep in mind. Please have us in your prayers about that. as we have said, as William and I have spoken on this program before, pardon me, we are living in some of the most fantastically exciting times that can possibly be imagined. Who would have thought? You know, William and I, and I'll get into the program here very shortly. William and I have shared that in the early 90s, when we would be in Warren, Ohio, speaking at the conference up there, after the conference was over, we'd gather together, and a bunch of us would kind of brainstorm, and we would dream. And we'd dream about, well, one of these days there's going to be preterist radio. Well, here we are on Two Guys in the Bible and Fulfilled Radio. One of these days there are going to be television programs, preterist television programs. And by the way, we know that Michael Miano has a radio program. We know that there are many, many, many Facebook pages dedicated to promoting covenant eschatology. I mean, there are just a bunch of them out there, folks. And then there are the TV programs. William Bell has a Saturday program on Now TV. I do not know if he's part of the expanded viewership or not. We haven't discussed that. But I can tell you this. As we sat and as we dreamed and as we thought and as we planned in the early 90s, we never imagined, maybe we are not dreamers enough, we never imagined the time would come when we would have the opportunity to share the message of realized eschatology with 300 million homes. Never thought of it. Never imagined it. And so to sit here today and to share with you possibility and the potential of having a program to reach out to 300 million homes, I have to tell you, it's mind-blowing, it's staggering, it's exciting, and needless to say, it is challenging. So, I mean, just think about it, folks. What does the future hold? Well, I have people tell me all the time is coming in which covenant eschatology is going to be the dominant paradigm. And we are seeing more and more and more and more people who are dispensationalists turning away from it. We are seeing more and more amillennialists and postmillennialists especially, who have read the works of Kenneth Gentry, Gary DeMar, Keith Matheson, and others, who have read the hermeneutic that those good men set forth about honoring time statements, honoring audience relevance, honoring covenant language. And then they see the inconsistency of these men like Gentry and DeMar and Matheson and Zechariah and others. And they say, the hermeneutic is valid. The hermeneutic is solid. It is true. Why don't you guys follow it all the way? Because if you did, you would be full preterists. And so we are hearing from more and more people all of the time who are abandoning the traditional views of eschatology. And they are adopting the full, true preterist view of Bible prophecy. It is truly exciting. Okay, and I'll tell you what's exciting. When we can go to the Scriptures, and we don't have to go to the newspaper, and we don't have to engage in fanciful or presuppositional hermeneutic or exegesis, i.e. eisegesis, but rather we can go to the text, we can examine the context, and then we can see how the Bible itself uses those prophecies, how the Bible itself applies the Old Testament prophecies of the Messianic Temple, which has been the object of our study here on Two Guys in the Bible for several months now. And when we see the New Testament application, guess what, folks? there really honestly cannot be any serious doubt about how the New Testament applies these Old Testament prophecies. And so, with that in mind, one of the most famous, one of the, shall we say, one of the clearest Old Testament prophecies of the Messianic Temple is to be found in Zechariah chapter 6. Now, Zechariah chapter 6 contains a prophecy of 4 chariots with, horsemen. You have a black horse going to the north country, the white going after them, the dappled are going toward the south country. Then the strong steeds went out, eager to go, that they might walk to and fro throughout the earth. And he said, go and walk to and fro through the earth. So they walked to and fro through the earth. Pardon me, ladies and gentlemen, my allergies are terrible. And he called to me and spoke to me, saying, see, those who go toward the north country have given rest to my spirit in the north country. Now, I have to tell you, this is somewhat of a very enigmatic prophecy. When you read the commentaries, you're going to find all sorts, believe you me, all sorts of varying interpretations. It may distinctly be possible that when Zechariah said, these who go toward the north country have given rest to my spirit in the north country, it may very well, this is a possibility. I'm not setting it forth as definitive by any means. And like I said, when you read the commentaries, when you have some of the best scholars in the world, and they read and comment on this prophecy, and they tell you this is extremely difficult, it is very enigmatic, it is difficult to decipher, then guess what? I do not feel all that terribly bad, even though I'm one of these people, I want answers. I mean, I want to know. But nonetheless, when I know that some of the best scholars in the history of biblical interpretation come to a passage like this, and they say, this is difficult, this is not easy, then it makes me feel a little bit better when I read it and I go, wonder what that means. But here is one possible explanation. When he says, my soul found rest about the north country, this language of being in the north country was the language of being taken to Babylonian captivity. And it may, I emphasize, may be that Zechariah is saying that the captives who did not return were not duty-bound to do so, that they could remain there if they so desired. Now, keep in mind that a remnant had returned from Babylon. We know that from Ezra and Nehemiah. And so it was a remnant that returned, not the whole body of Israel, i.e. Judah, that had been carried off into captivity. We know this. So, was the writer, was Zechariah, was God through the Spirit saying that since the righteous remnant had returned, and since the righteous remnant was in the process of building the temple of the Lord, that was sufficient? They were not duty-bound to return from the north country. Now, if somebody wants to challenge that, that's just fine by me. And if you've got a better explanation, I would love to hear it. And furthermore, I welcome hearing it. These verses 1 to 8, can be called a pericope. They almost stand alone. It's almost like this is a vision that was just simply inserted into the book, and there it stands. Now, it's probably somehow related to chapter 5 and the woman and a basket and filling the measure of sin. Probably related to that, but I don't know for sure. So I'm going to leave it at that, and we move on, and we find the following. Then the word of the Lord came to me, saying, receive the gift from the captives, from Heldai, Tobiah, Jediah, who have come from Babylon, and go the same day and enter the house of Josiah, the son of Zephaniah. See, here are some of that righteous remnant who returned from Babylon that I mentioned a moment ago. These are those, boy, I tell you what, when you think about it, you have to have an incredible appreciation for those Jews who returned from Babylon back to Judah to rebuild the temple. Folks, look, they didn't have superhighways. They didn't have interstates. They didn't have, wonderful vehicles to drive in security and safety and speed. It was a long, arduous, and dangerous trek from Babylon back to Judah. There were the dangers of the desert. There were the dangers of wild animals. There were the dangers of thieves and bandits, killers. And yet these individuals, these three that are mentioned right here, Heldai, Tobiah, and Jediah, these men were men of tremendous courage and tremendous faith to make that arduous, dangerous journey back to Judah. And they brought gifts with them to enter into the house of Josiah, the son of Zephaniah. And then we're told, take the silver and gold, make an elaborate crown, and set it on the head of Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest. Then speak to him, saying, thus says the Lord of hosts. Now, here we have a very real man, Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest. Now, you do know, do you not? I'm sure you do, that Joshua, carried over into Greek, is Jesus. And the commentators have taken note that this Joshua is a foretaste. He is a type and a shadow of Jesus. Just like Joshua, who led the children of Israel into the land of promise, was a type and a shadow of Christ, as Hebrews 3 and 4 points out. This Joshua is also a type and a shadow of Christ. Now notice he is the son of the high priest. That means he is a priest himself. And all the more relevancy for him being a type of Christ. So here is this man named Joshua, the son of the high priest, and they construct a very elaborate crown of gold and of silver to put on his head. Now, the high priest normally did not wear a crown, ladies and gentlemen. He wore a turban. When you go back and read Exodus chapters 25 through 40, and when you read about the high priest's garments and his head apparel, it's not a crown, it's a turban. Now, it's elaborate to be sure, but it's not a crown. So something is going on here with this Joshua, who is being given a crown, and he is a priest. So, the command is made, make an elaborate crown of, silver and gold, set it on the head of Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest, then speak to him, saying, thus says the Lord of hosts, saying, behold, the man whose name is the branch. From his place he shall branch out, and he shall build the temple of the Lord. Yes, he shall build the temple of the Lord. He shall bear the glory and shall sit and rule, catch this now, on his throne. So he shall be a priest on his throne, and the council of peace shall be between them. Now, something remarkable is taking place here. Remember, the priest historically was not a king. The king historically was not a priest. You see, you have David, who is of the lineage of Jesse, the tribe of Judah. Now, according to Hebrews chapter 7, verse 14, it is evident that our Lord sprang from Judah. And according to the law, no one from the tribe of Judah, no one who is not of the tribe of Levi could be a priest. And so we have, in this prophecy of Zechariah chapter 6, a really amazing, really remarkable prophecy that is now joining the function of priest and king. Now, look, Joshua was of the Levitical tribe, right? I mean, his father's the high priest. He is of the Levitical lineage through Aaron, right on up through. He is not of the tribe of Judah. And yet the king, according to Genesis chapter 49 and verse 10, the law shall not depart, a lawgiver shall not depart, nor a scepter from between his feet, because speaking of Judah, until Shiloh comes, and to him shall the gathering of the people be. The scepter shall not depart from Judah. Judah was the lineage through whom Messiah was going to come, not through. And so once again, something incredible is taking place here. You're going to have a king who is of the tribe of Levi. Okay, that's remarkable itself, because the Davidic line, now, you see, we have to catch this. We have to be very careful and honor this. The promise of the Messiah, as I've already mentioned ever so briefly, the promise of the Messiah was made that the lineage would come through the seed of David. In Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1, a root or a branch shall rise up through the root of Jesse. Well, once again, that's the tribe of Judah. And according to Psalms 89, 35 to 37, the Lord said, I have sworn with an oath that according to my oath, I will set a descendant of David on his throne. I will establish it like the sun and the moon and the stars which are before me, which shall not ever be moved, and he shall sit on the throne of David and rule forever. In Samuel, 2 Samuel chapter 7, 13 and 14, the Lord made the promise to David through Solomon that after David slept with his fathers, he would, from the seed of David, one of his descendants, and he would build the kingdom, and he would build the house of the Lord. And he would rule and he would reign forever without end. So you see, we know that Messiah, the king, would come through the lineage of David, Jesse and David, of the tribe of Judah. Now keep in mind, passage that I cited a moment ago, according to Hebrews chapter 7, verse 14, it's evident that no one the right to be approved is not of Levi, and it is evident, the writer said, that the Lord sprang from Judah, of which nothing was said concerning the priesthood. The Lord said, Levi. That excluded Judah and Zebulun and Manasseh, etc., etc., etc. So, for Zechariah chapter 6, verse 13, to set before us a man by the name of Joshua, who in the Greek would be Jesus, and he has a throne put on his head to designate him as a king, not priest. He's already of the Levitical tribe. His father is already the high priest. But this extra element is now added to him. You know, I cannot help but think, really honestly, I cannot but help but think that the folks who originally read this and the folks who heard this were standing back going, wait a minute. Back there in Ezekiel and Jeremiah, the Lord made a promise that no descendant of Jeconiah, who was of the Davidic line, would ever sit on the throne in Judah. In other words, no physical presence. Well, here we have a man who is of the tribe of Levi that is being designated as the king. And yet, here's something remarkable. And you know, I'm gonna profess and confess my ignorance at this point. I do not know of another descendant of Levi that was ever crowned as king after Joshua. Now, some of you folks who are into genealogy really deeply, who have done a lot of study into the genealogical records and the historical records of the kingships, perhaps, or even the priesthoods, high priest, et cetera, I may simply have missed that. But as I sit here and I contemplate this incredible record that we have in Zechariah chapter 6, it dawns on me that I simply do not remember another member of the Levitical tribe ever being designated as a king by wearing a crown in Israel. You know, if ever was going to be someone like that, it seems to me that it would have been one of the Maccabees. It seems to me that it would have been John Hyrcanus, that it might even have been Judas Maccabeus or one of those other brothers. I don't remember them ever being called kings. Now, they tried to serve in the role of priest. However, they recognized they were not duly qualified at all. And so, even though they were of the priestly family, none of them were high priests, and certainly none of them were prophets. And so, as a result of that, Judas Maccabeus made the statement, or John Hyrcanus made the statement during that intertestamental period of time when they had managed to recapture the temple, to take the vessels of the temple. They buried them, they hid them away, and as he said, as John Hyrcanus said, that they would hide those vessels until the time came a prophet would arise. As a matter of fact, I just happen to remember, if I've got this, let me see here. I've got a quote from John Hyrcanus that I just happen to remember, but I don't have it on this computer. It's on my computer at the house. What he was saying, though, was that they were going to hide those vessels away until a prophet and a high priest came who would be qualified to purify them, and so that they could be used in the temple once again. He did not feel qualified to do that, even though he was obviously the leader in Israel. But he predicted the time in which a prophet would arise that would sanctify, that would cleanse and sanctify those vessels once again. Like I said, I just remembered that that quote from John Hyrcanus. If anyone wants that from me, I'll be able to get that from my computer that is at the office. And I apologize for not being able to remember that direct quote at all, but that's just kind of the way that is. That's the way the old memory fails us from time to time. All right? So I hope you can see what we have going on here in Zechariah chapter 6. Now, I want you to notice something. Not only is Joshua designated as king and priest, which comes into play when we come into the book of Hebrews, so kind of hang on to that. Don't let that slip. But I want you to notice, behold the man whose name is the branch. Now, I cited for you a few moments ago Isaiah chapter 11. And let me just go there very, very quickly and to read for you how Isaiah chapter 11. And look, folks, Isaiah 11 has been recognized as a messianic prophecy like forever. There is seldom any issue, any doubt, no question or debate as to whether or not it was considered to be messianic all down through history. So, there shall come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse. A branch shall grow out of his roots. Okay? Now, here's what's interesting about this. Here we have the prophecy of the branch. But you see, it's not the only prophecy of the branch that we find, even in Isaiah. And we have one in Jeremiah as well. But in Isaiah 4, now a little bit of contextual background here, okay? Isaiah chapters 2 through 4 are a singular, united prophecy. It is set in the last days. Can I give just a tiny, tiny bit of a digression here? I'm reading a book by Kyle Pope, minister in the Churches of Christ. The book is entitled Thinking on AD 70. It purports to be Brother Pope's refutation of covenant eschatology. And I want to tell you, when you think about refutations of covenant eschatology, and you read things from men like Brother Pope, you are struck by how confused and confusing his comments really are. Now, very, very quickly, I don't want to get too far afield here. Brother Pope believes that the law of Moses, the entire Old Testament, was nailed to the cross. Okay, that's fundamental in the Churches of Christ. You just have to, you just simply have to understand that. Okay, so with that in mind, keep in mind, Brother Pope believes that the law of Moses, the entire Old Testament, was nailed to the cross. Well, in Isaiah chapter 2, verse 2, it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the tops of the hills. Well, guess what? Brother Pope says the last days there are the Christian age. Well, this is rather remarkable. Here we have in Isaiah chapters 2 through 4 a prophecy concerning Israel. Now remember, God was supposedly through with Israel at the cross. And yet, Brother Pope believes that Isaiah chapter 2 and the establishment of the kingdom, i.e. the church, was fulfilled on Pentecost. But wait a minute. Pentecost is 50 days after the cross, where the law of Moses was supposedly nailed to the cross, and where God was supposedly through with Israel at the cross. Well, if God was through with Israel at the cross, if God was through with the Old Testament at the cross, why is it that in Acts chapter 2 you have God fulfilling fulfilling Isaiah chapter 2 on the day of Pentecost, 50 days after the cross? Do you see how confused and confusing Brother Pope's position really is? Now look, I used to take that position. I used to believe that Isaiah chapter 2, verse 2 was fulfilled on the day of Pentecost, but it wasn't. Cannot have the old covenant being fulfilled after the cross if the old covenant was nailed to the cross, annulled, abrogated, taken out of the way. I'm sorry, that is self-contradictory. It just doesn't work. Okay, back to the branch. So here in Isaiah chapter 11, behold, a rod shall grow up out of the root of Jesse, and shall be a branch. Well, so we have this prophecy of the appearance of the branch. Well, guess what? In Isaiah chapter 4, in that day, and all you have to do is follow the references to in that day, all the way through Isaiah 2 through 4, and you realize that it is, in fact, one united prophecy. Isaiah chapter 2, verse 2 is not a pericope. In other words, it's not a standalone prophecy. No, Isaiah 2 through 4 is all set in the last days. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about all of the things that are foretold in Isaiah chapters 2 through 4 that simply do not fit the amillennial paradigm and the amillennial definition of the last days being the Christian age, in direct conflict and contradiction of their position that God was through with Israel and the Old Testament at the cross. But here's what I want you to see. In that day, 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own food, wear our own apparel, only let us be called by your name. Take away our reproach. Well, folks, this language is from the language of war and conflict that goes back to chapter 3, verse 25. Your men, whose men is that? That's Israel's men, shall fall by the edge of the sword. Your mighty men in the war, or in war, not the war. Her gates, that's Jerusalem, shall lament and mourn, and she, being desolate, shall sit on the ground in that day. So in the day of the destruction of Jerusalem, 7 women take hold of one man, saying, we'll eat our own food, we'll wear our own clothes. Just let us wear your name. Wait a minute. This is a prophecy of the destruction of Jerusalem. This is a prophecy of a time of war. This is a prophecy when Israel's men would fall by the edge of the sword. And here's the kicker to this. In Luke 21:24, Jesus cites Isaiah 3:25 to speak of AD 70. So here we have Jesus applying Isaiah 3:25 to AD 70. But wait a minute. Isaiah is part of that old covenant that was supposedly nailed to the cross, and AD 70 is having to do with Israel, with whom God was supposedly through with at the cross. Why is Jesus talking about God dealing with Israel in AD 70 if God was through with Israel in AD 70? Why was God fulfilling promises made to old covenant Israel after the cross? You see, we should have absolutely no prophecy concerning Israel after the cross, if and since or if God was through with Israel at the cross. Do you see that, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, to move on. Isaiah 4, verse 2. In that day, the branch. Now, what's Zechariah telling us about? Well, we got Joshua, the son of Jehozadak. This man shall be called the branch. Oh, but wait. He's not the Messiah. He is being anointed king and priest, but he's looking forward to the ultimate king and priest. In that day, the branch of the Lord, and this is, the word branch here is from the Hebrew word simosh. I don't know if that's pronounced correctly or not. T-S-E-M-A-C-H. Simosh. And it's that beautiful living thing. Something along that line, according to the commentaries, the Hebrew commentaries that I have read. Okay? So, in the day of the conflict, when Israel's men would fall by the edge of the sword, in that day, you got to hang on to this, folks. This is good stuff. In that day, the branch of the Lord shall be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and appealing for those of Israel who have escaped. And it shall come to pass that he who is left in Zion, the one who remains in Jerusalem, will be called holy, because everyone who is recorded among the living in Jerusalem, when the Lord has washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion and purged the blood of Jerusalem from her midst by the spirit of judgment and the spirit of fire. Now, let me repeat what I just said at the risk of redundancy. If God was through with Israel at the cross, if the entirety of the law was nailed to the cross, it is no longer applicable. Here is a prophecy that at the time of the destruction of Jerusalem, after the cross, almost 40 years after the cross, at that time the branch of the Lord shall be beautiful, and at that time the Lord will take away from Jerusalem the blood guilt of Jerusalem by the spirit of judgment and fire. And what did the Lord say he was going to do? Wash away the filth of the daughters of Zion. What you see, what we have here, ladies and gentlemen, is the promise of the establishment of a fountain for the cleansing of the filth of Jerusalem. That is promised in Zechariah chapter 13, verse 1. But when would that be? Oh, that would be in the day in which they will look upon him whom they have pierced, and there shall be mourning throughout the entire land of Judah. All the land of Judah, not just Jerusalem. So it's not talking about the crucifixion. Now, we know that they looked upon him whom they pierced, according to John chapter 19. Yes, we know that. That's not the time of the mourning throughout the entire land of Judah, mourning as an only begotten son. No, the cross is not that time. And so, what we have here, once again, and I'm running out of time very, very quickly, but what we have here in this story of Joshua, the story of a man being made both king and priest, we have him being called the branch. And listen, did you catch that, what I said about the branch here in Isaiah chapter 4, verse 2? And that day, what day? Once again, don't forget, this is the day of the time of the judgment of Jerusalem, when Israel's men would fall by the edge of the sword. That is absolutely determinative in Luke 21 and verse 24. But it's in that day that the branch of the Lord would be glorified. And not only that, chapter 4, verse 5, the Lord will create above every dwelling place of Mount Zion, and above her assemblies a cloud and smoke by day, and the shining of a flaming fire by night. For over all the glory there will be covering. There will be a tabernacle for shade in the daytime from the heat, for a place of refuge, for a shelter from storm and rain. Do you see what's being promised here? The new Messianic Temple / tabernacle. You see, all of this is put within this identical framework of in that, absolutely myopic. Should we attempt to make this a reference to the cross? The cross was not the time of the cleansing of the daughters of Zion or the atoning for the blood guilt of Jerusalem by the spirit of judgment and the spirit of fire. How do we know that? Well, we know that because Jesus said that all of the blood of all the righteous that were shed on the earth, all of the blood of from righteous Abel unto Zechariah son of Barachias, whom you slew between the altar, would be required of that generation. And verily I say unto you, Jesus said, all of these things shall come upon this generation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, all of the blood of all the righteous was not avenged at the cross. Jesus' own blood, Jesus' own death was not avenged at the cross. And so, again, it would be absolutely myopic on our part to come to Isaiah 2 and this prophecy of the last days and say, oh, well, this was all fulfilled at the cross. Well, it was fulfilled at the cross. You got major problems. That must be when Israel's men fell by the edge of the sword, which, of course, is ridiculous. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time for this evening. We will pick up our study of Zechariah chapter 6 and verse 13 and the anointing of Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, as king and priest in the tabernacle and in the temple of God. He would rule and reign at that time. Thank you so very much for joining me for this evening's Two Guys and a Bible here on Fulfilled Radio, a voice you can trust. With that, I will say good night and God bless.